Sheffield Wednesday against Bournemouth. I can't see anything past a Bournemouth win. I'm going to go 2-0 to the away side. The Championship, by far the most unpredictable league in the world. Let's talk about it. So guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we have got a lot of talking points to go over. We've got Sheffield Wednesday's shock result and also their point deduction being reduced from 12 points to 6 points, which could have a massive impact on the bottom half of the Championship. We had some ridiculous midweek games going on which were impossible to call. And speaking of how unpredictable this weekend was, I will include your guys' score predictions on screen now. So fair play to all of you guys who did get a prediction correct. They were absolutely all over the place. I got one of mine to put on in midweek. That was Brentford playing at a 1-0 draw with Swansea, but a big shout out goes to Thor10, who was the only person to correctly predict Watford 3 Stoke 2, and to Thomas Curry and Logan Spavin for being the only two people to correctly predict Cardiff 3 Barnsley 0. And if we do take a look at what that means for the prediction league, as you can see to the side of me, I've slipped down to 5th in the table, so you guys are making this quite competitive for me. And we did miss a couple of score predictions from the last video, but don't worry, all those have been added back onto the prediction league. As we can see, it's still Juvest FC who is leading the way, almost breaking that 100-point barrier, currently on 97 points. So like I always say, if you want to get yourselves involved in the prediction league, make sure to tune into tomorrow's video and leave your Championship score predictions. It's loads of fun and I'm interested to see who comes out on top at the end of it all. And we got quite a few other bits and bobs to go on and round up, so if you did go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like on today's video, guys. Get all your thoughts in the comments down below, but without any further ado, let's hop into this one. So I think it's typical of the Championship that Wednesday lose 3 consecutive matches, all up against teams who would expect them to pick up maybe a few points here and there from, and then they go up against the only unbeaten side still in the league, Bournemouth, and pick up all 3 points. It's the chaotic nature of the Championship this season, but it was a Barry Bannon penalty which separated these two sides in the end. But the most important thing for Sheffield Wednesday is having that point deduction halved from -12 to -6 points. As we can now see by the bottom of the Championship, that leaves Sheffield Wednesday on 5 points, so they're no longer in the negatives, and they're now only 3 points away from safety and catching up to Coventry outside that relegation zone. This was the statement that Sheffield Wednesday released last night. The club confirms today that its appeal was upheld in part. The decision of the league arbitration panel is that the sanction is reduced to a deduction of 6 points in season 20/21. Now this could have quite a few effects on the rest of the bottom of the Championship, because Sheffield Wednesday battling -12 points, we probably would have seen a scenario whereby Wednesday wouldn't have been getting out of the bottom 3 until probably around like 10 games to go or something like that. 12 points is a massive gap to overturn, especially when they have had patches of inconsistency throughout their season so far. They'd have needed to maintain the form of sort of a solid mid-table side at least throughout the season if they wanted to have any chance of wiping out those 12 points. But suddenly when it gets reduced to 6, it all seems very much manageable for them. The bottom of the Championship is going to be absolutely fascinating this season, and I'd like you guys, let me know in the comments down below, the bottom 3, who would you say the most likely to go down at this point in time? Let me know down below, because that -6 points for Wednesday is absolutely massive. And we may as well move up the league table to Derby County, who lost again in midweek, 1-0 against QPR. The times are getting ever more worrying for them, and I think that the general mood around Derby, especially in the comment section from the Derby fans that I've spoke to so far, have very much been backing the manager. We saw them last season getting off to a really slow start to the season, and eventually they came good. However, what we've seen from them so far this season, there's been plenty of worrying signs. With this team at the moment, there's a real lack of urgency on the ball, and to actually score goals has been a problem for them. They're the lowest scoring side in the league currently with just 5 goals, and QPR really did a number on them for this one. Rob Dickie, absolutely superb, both at the back and with the way he set up that last minute goal for Macaulay Barnes. Derby fans, what's the answer to this one? Is Koku's time running out there? I think we were all guilty of holding the opinion that Wycombe were going to be the whipping boys of the league about, 6 games into this season or so, but they're now unbeaten in their last 3. It's back-to-back wins with the Chairboys after beating Birmingham 2-1 in midweek, and it was some second half performance from them, you have to say. Birmingham are a team which I don't think I'm ever quite going to understand, because they were brilliant at the weekend against Preston. I thought that they were creating a lot more chances going forward. That was one of the negatives that we'd had of Birmingham so far this season. They weren't experimental enough going forward, but it was a really good away performance, and I was expecting them to build on that, albeit against a Wycombe side who had been improving, but I'd still back them for all 3 points in this one. First off, everything seemed to go to plan, but then the second half, Wycombe came out to play and just outworked Birmingham for that second half, which was a worry. The result for Wycombe though lifts them up to 22nd in the Championship and leaves them just 1 point off safety at the moment, and we got a scrap at the bottom of the Championship now. It's going to be very interesting. And that result for Wycombe leaves them breathing down the necks of Coventry City, who lost out in the last minute against Nottingham Forest 2-1. Quite a bit of drama involved in this match, and it wasn't even a bad performance from the away side in this one. Coventry definitely had their openings and the chances to make it 2-1. Ben Sheaf and Callum O'Hare especially being two of the real stand-up performers from that away side. The goal they scored was absolutely brilliantly worked. There's a cheap penalty that they gave away in the last seconds of this one to give Forest all 3 points. And Lyle Taylor, by the way, is he the coolest penalty taker in the league? The guy's got ice running through his veins as he walks up to the penalty and tucks it away nicely. But a big 3 points for Forest in the grand scheme of things. Coventry, I think, did get quite unlucky. And then we had Luton beating Rotherham by 1-0. Form in the Championship really means nothing at the moment, doesn't it? I think that Luton are very much this all or nothing side this season. They've only drawn one match. But hey, that's going to suit them. It keeps them in the top half of the Championship table for the time being. Now, Rotherham have been an interesting side to watch so far this season. After that 3-0 hammering of Sheffield Wednesday, they've followed it up with 2 consecutive 1-0 losses. And what's seemingly been the case in a lot of Rotherham matches so far is them to have a strong first half and then for them to fade a little bit going into the second. That seemed to be the case in this one because the first half they had some great chances. Simon Sluga, who we mentioned on yesterday's video, made some terrific saves for Luton. But in the end, it's all 3 points for the away side, which leaves them 9th in the table. Blackburn against Middlesbrough played out a goalless draw. Middlesbrough still in the top 6 though, and another clean sheet for them. It's been some defensive record from Neil Warnock's men so far this season. And to be honest, I thought the away side got maybe a little bit unlucky not to go on and win this one. They had several moments of the game where they were on top. They were dominating in those attacking areas. They just couldn't make all that possession and chances count in the end. Blackburn grew into the game in the second half, but ultimately couldn't really get into their flow either. They've been a funny old side, Blackburn, so far this season, but defensively they did look stronger, and Ainsley Pearce did pull off a couple of nice saves. Bristol City got back to winning ways as they won at Huddersfield. This one reminded me quite a lot of Huddersfield's game against Preston that we had there. Huddersfield really good for that first half, getting into a lot of goal scoring opportunities, worked the ball quite well. The goal was actually really well worked. It was a nice ball across, and then Josh Koroma, another goal for his tally this season. But Bristol City looked to change things in the second half, and I think it was the 2 second half introductions of Semenyo and Jamie Patterson coming on, which really changed the game for Bristol City, gave them a lot more impetus going forward. Each of those subs had an impact. Semenyo set up the first goal and then Patterson grabbed the second. And this sort of result was needed for Bristol City as they had hit a bit of a slump in their season. The result takes them up to 17 points, now level with both Middlesbrough and Bournemouth. And another team who was in need of a result in midweek was Cardiff, and they got just that against Barnsley. Terrific 3-0. They had plenty of chances going forward and Barnsley just couldn't live with them defensively. Now, Cardiff, Harry Wilson being the main man for this one. He won the penalty and then wrapped it up with that delightful finish to make it 3 in the second half. And Cardiff were a side who I was anticipating to come good eventually. I mean, with the way you expect them to be defensively solid, and they do have these game-changing players going forward who can come up with these real moments of quality. You know, the system at times may not be as fluid as it could be, but when you've got the creative sparks of like a Junior Hoyle, a Harry Wilson, individual moments of quality will serve Cardiff really well this season. It was a terrific goal from Wilson, wasn't it? He's going to be good this season. And then to another 3-0 victory in midweek, we had Preston North End beating Reading by 3-0, meaning that Reading's lead at the top of the Championship is now cut down to just 3 points. It's a really unpredictable league this season. It's going to be absolutely bonkers, but Preston find themselves in a really weird situation at the moment whereby all of our 13 points so far this season have been picked up away from home, and at Deepdale we seem to be useless. But what really went for us in this game was Reading allowed us space to run into, and that's where we absolutely thrive with the attackers we have going forward. It's been clear to see at Deepdale, you know, we struggle to break down these deep blocks. You know, teams especially who play 5 at the back, we can't really have an answer to break that sort of team down. But Reading came on to us and they certainly had their chances for this one. You know, Lucas Jow will be looking at himself thinking, how have I not scored in this one? Declan Rudd made a couple of really good saves in the first half to deny him and Sonny Aluko. In the second half, Jow raced through own goal, but Jordan Story recovered brilliantly with this tackle. And then we were clinical and took our moments going forward. Scott Sinclair bags another one for the season. Emil Rees is now up and going for the season. It was a brilliant ball through from Ryan Ledson. He really is growing into that deep line playmaker role for us. He's getting better as the weeks go on. But Emil Rees, more than deserving of his goal, he did actually win the penalty for us, which Daniel Johnson missed. Can you believe it? His unbelievable penalty record for North End takes a hit in that one as Raphael saved well, but it didn't matter in the end, and then Brad Potts wrapped up with a nice goal on the counter-attack. With the way that Reading started out the season, I think it was always going to be unsustainable to say the least, wasn't it? You know, it was a flawless start they had. And the 3-0 in the end probably did flatten North End a little bit, you know, with some of the chances that Reading had. It was amazing that they didn't score. Their next game before the international break is up against Stoke City, and thankfully Preston's next game is away from home. And one team especially who was going to be keeping the key eye on the Preston game was Swansea City, now just 3 points off the top of the table. They played out a 1-1 draw with Brentford in midweek in what was quite an interesting tactical battle. The most informed striker in the league, Ivan Toney, bagged another for the season. He gave Brentford the lead in the first half, quite a nicely worked goal as the ball was cut back to him, his 10th league goal of the season now. But Swansea really grew into this game, played some really nice football for the second half. David Raya pulled off several really big saves for the home side, but eventually Andre Ayew got Swansea back into the game. Some brilliant work down the right hand side from Matty Grimes to pull the ball back into Ayew, and their star man finished well. And he almost went ahead and won this one with the last touch of the game. The ball was in the back of the net, but he was ruled out for offside. Looking back on the replay, I think that was the right decision. But Swansea definitely building in the right direction. They've been a good side so far this season. The table shows that. I think I'm expecting both Swansea and Brentford to be battling it out in around the top 6 come the end of the year. Another team who we expect will be up and around the top of the Championship come the end of the year was Norwich, and it was a good performance in midweek against Millwall, albeit they didn't get the goals to show for it. They had 27 shots in this match. At the start of the season, we sort of argued that Norwich, the results were there, but the performances weren't quite happening. In this game, it was the opposite. They didn't quite get the result in the end, but the performance, there was a lot of encouraging signs of what could be to come from Norwich this season. Obviously, it was brilliant at the weekend against Bristol City as they put 3 goals past them, but Millwall were in need of this sort of game after conceding 3 last time out. It was a good, gritty defensive performance where they just about managed to keep Norwich at bay, albeit they didn't have as much going forward as they probably would have liked to. I think they'll settle up for the point in the end. Norwich on another day could have had like 4 or 5 goals, but it just wasn't quite happening for them, and like I say, Millwall did defend well. You have to give them credit for that. But even with Norwich dropping the 2 points, it still leaves them 4 points off the top of the Championship and still with it all to play for. And then to round things off with the Watford game, where there was quite a bit of controversy in this one as well. Stoke started out really well, taking the lead, but the equaliser from Tom Cleverley, I think he's been accredited with the goal in the end. It was a brilliant strike. Angus Gunn does brilliantly to tip it onto the bar. However, he's then bundled over the line by João Pedro, who comes crashing into him. And although the ball hadn't initially gone over the line, the referee then gives the goal despite the foul on the keeper. So it was all a bit of a contentious goal, that one. I think Watford maybe got a little bit fortunate with it, but they certainly had their moments going forward. They made it 2 from the penalty spot, João Pedro. After a failed clearance from Danny Batth, it was Angus Gunn who gave away the penalty. But there was more late drama. Stoke made it 2-2. Nick Powell with a really nice finish, but Ismail Lassar with an absolutely inch-perfect finish in at the near post makes it 3-2 to Watford, leaves them on 18 points as well, the same as Norwich. And it was all a bit of a rollercoaster of a game in the end. As you can see on screen now, that is the Championship table come the end of this game week. So we've got another one coming up at the weekend, and then we do have another international break where we get to sort of digest all the football that we've seen so far. So do get all your thoughts in the comments down below as to what did you make of your team's performance in midweek. Who are you fancying for that bottom 3, and how much will that -6 points affect Sheffield Wednesday for the season? But apart from that, guys, thanks so much for watching. So if you did go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like, and please do subscribe for a bit of regular Championship content. But apart from that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.